And for our very first episode, ayan, pag-uusapan natin with Dr. Rafael are the things that we enjoy during the winter. At kasama na dyan, of course, ang ating pagkakamping, ang paggamit ng mga ATV or all-terrain vehicles. So, Doc, for my first question, why do you think that we need injury prevention in Qatar? Or ano nga ba din ang HIIP or HIPP kung saan po kayo nag-work?
Salamat, Kenzo, sa tanong. Marami nagtatanong sa akin yan. Kasi sa totoo lang, ang term na injury prevention ay medyo, sabihin natin, strange. Hindi sanay na maririnig mo in prevention of infection, mga ganoon. Pero ang injury prevention napaka-importante kasi mag-umpisa tayo sa datos, Kenzo.
Right.
So, ang pangunahing, sabihin natin, ang pangunahing layunin ng lahat ng OFW at ating kabayan dito ay para makapagtrabaho na safe, na healthy tayo. Kasi syempre, ang prime natin, makapag-ipon tayo ng ating pera, makapagpadala tayo sa mga pamilya natin sa Pilipinas.
Right.
So, magagawa ba natin yun kung hindi tayo healthy is na yung number one question. Now, karamihan ng ating kapwa OFW, well, siguro kayo, hindi na siguro ako kasama, ay young. Sabihin natin young. So, I would say between the ages of 20 to probably 50, 20 to 55. Ano bang pangunahing, sabihin natin, health concern ng mga ganyan ng age? Hindi naman cancer, hindi naman heart disease, hindi naman stroke.
Right.
So, ang parati ko sinasabi sa ating mga kabayan is, you are young, you are healthy, you are here to work. The number one cause, if you don't know it, na pwede kang ma-hospital or knock on wood, ma-severely injure, is an accident o tinatawag nating injury. So, kailangan araw-araw, naiisip natin na ang layunin ko, makapagtrabaho ng safe, so kailangan natin lahat ng injury prevention. So, yun yung unang datos ko, sir. You are young, you are at OFW, your main priority is to work and to earn money. You cannot do that if you're not healthy. And what is the number one health risk for you? It is an injury, let's face it.
Right.
So, dito sa Qatar, gawin natin the whole of Qatar, 75% ng Qatar is working age.
Right, exactly.
So yan, isa pang dahilan kaya layunin niya ng Hamad Trauma Center. So punta tayo sa datos ng Qatar ngayon. Kada taon, mga siguro 2,000 tao na mamatay sa Qatar. Ang 20% o mga 400 nun, namamatay dahil sa mga trauma or injuries.
Okay.
Ang namamatay doon, sa loob ng Hamad Trauma Center, na nakakaabot, na nagagamot namin mga doktor at nurse, mga less than 70 to 60 lang naman.
So that's about 20% po nung deaths, ano?
Oh, you're right, 20% or so. So, kung tutsin, ang 80% ng namamatay sa injury o sa trauma, hindi man lang umaabot sa ospital, hindi man lang nahahawakan ng mga kasama natin from the ambulance service. So, ganun ka-importante ang prevention. Kaya, sa Hamad Trauma Center, hindi lang kami nagtatahi, hindi lang kami naggagamot, lumalabas kami sa komunidad, sa mga eskwelahan, para mapalaganap ang mensahe na mas magandang iwasan ang sakuna, iwasan ang maging aksidente o injury. Kaya ganun ka-importante na mag-prevent tayo. Because you will save 80% of the possible deaths. Kung nandun lang kami sa ospital, yung kubad, the tip of the iceberg lang ang tinutukoy namin. So we want to be all-encompassing. We want to provide full service to the people of Qatar.
And does that include the Filipino population dito sa mga datos po na binigay natin?
So, we include all nationalities also. Walang discrimination. Ang Hamad Medical Corporation, kahit saan ka nanggaling, we will treat you. But may mga Filipino rin tayong kababayan din tayo nasasaktan. Unfortunately, meron din na nagiging biktima ng fatal na injuries. That's why, of course, it's very important that you host us on this show para we can reach that audience.
Right.
Importante yun.
Right. And one of the things that usually get people injured ay yung sa mga activities na yan ay yung ating tinatawag, kanina nabanggit na natin, yung ATV or all-terrain vehicles or quad bikes. So ayan, gaano po ba to kadelikado?
Yun. Ayoko sabihin na delikado siya. Kasi there is a way to do it safely. I'll start again sa datos tayo mag-umpisa ulit, Kenzo. So, ang ginawa namin, tinignan namin, kinuha namin ang datos ng ambulance service natin. Kinuha natin ang datos ng Wakra Hospital kasi nandun katabi ng C-Line. Pati ang datos namin sa Hamad Trauma Center. Ang pinakamalala, pinakamatinding mga injuries doon nagpupunta sa Hamad Trauma Center. Yung mga medyo may serious pero hindi moderate na tawagin natin, pupunta sa Al-Wakra. Yung ambulance, lahat yan tinitignan nila. So, Sa loob ng 3 taon, kasi ang season naman yan, gaya na sinabi mo kanina, ang panahon na maganda, siguro November hanggang March. So, yan ang
Right.
tinatawag nating winter season.
Mhm.
So, sa 3 taon na yan, mahigit 1,100 ang naging biktima.
Okay.
So, sa tatlong data source na yan. So, ang una ko masasabi is roughly 350 to 400 residents of Qatar get injured because of quad bikes every year.
Wow.
So, hindi
Quite a lot.
hindi malit. Yung kagandahan nun, karamihan minor.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yun ang kagandahan nun. Yung hindi masyadong kagandahan nun is hindi siya nagde-decrease.
Right.
Not like, sabihin natin, ang road crashes nagde-decrease sa mga numero natin.
Mhm.
Ang quad bike, even, kumbaga, stable siya through those 2 years na pinag-aralan namin. So, ang gusto namin sa lahat, bumababa ang mga numero. So, unfortunately, ang ATV injuries hindi bumababa.
Ano po ba usually yung mga types of injuries na nakukuha
Ayun.
natin sa ATV?
So, ang pinakamalala talaga doon is the brain injury.
Okay.
Yan ang isa sa kasi either tumitilapon from the bike o tumatama sa fixed object na tinatawag natin. Kapag ang tao ay nagsumakay ng ATV na walang helmet, nag-increase by as much as 5 to 8 times ang chance na may traumatic brain injury tawag. Para maintindihan nyo yung traumatic brain injury, sabihin natin, makokoma ka.
Right.
Pwedeng pansamantala na coma, pwedeng panghabang buhay na coma, o pwedeng lethal na coma na magiging dahilan ng yung pagkamatay. So, ganun ka-important. So, you asked the right question, Kenzo. One of the most lethal or dangerous injuries is a head injury. But again, I'll put it on the other side. Meron tayong pag-iwas doon.
Mhm.
Magsuot ka ng helmet. Every
Right.
time na mag-ATV ka, mag-quad bike ka, kapag hindi ka naka-helmet, dapat hindi ka magpapaandar ng quad bike mo.
Okay. Pero meron po bang regulations in terms sa paggamit ng quad bike? Is there like any specific law or that prohibits people to use, like for example, may certain criteria ba yan? Kailangan ba kumuha ng permit to use a quad bike? Or may lisensya ba or whatever? Meron po ba tayong ganun dito sa Qatar?
Again, another very good question, Kendo. So, ang isa sa partner namin ng Hamad Injury Prevention Program ay ang traffic awareness section ng Ministry of Interior Traffic Directorate. So, they are working with us. As of now, there is a voluntary standard na tinatawag natin. So, kunwari magpunta ako, magre-rent ako dapat ng ATV, may mga sasabihin sa iyo ang nagpaparent, dapat naka-helmet ka as much as possible. Dapat nandun ka sa nakatakda na area ng ATV kasi may nakaset silang area Nakatakda area, tapos bawal ang children below 18.
Okay.
So yun ang mga tinatawag natin voluntary standards na sineset nila. Hindi pa naibabatas yun kasi pinag-uusapan pa. Hindi pa nakalagay sa batas. So there are no, as of the last time we had the meeting, there are no set criteria or set regulations or penalties for it. It's a voluntary standard.
Okay. So kailangan talagang meron ding gabay, lalo na ng mga magulang. Especially kasi kung halimbawa may mga bata na gustong mag-quad bike, kasi nakakatawa talaga tingnan I think all of us have been to the beach area at nagpunta na tayo sa mga campsites, and isa to sa mga main activities and isa sa pinakagustong gawin ng mga kabataan, lalo ng mga teenagers, ay ang mag-quad bike. So, ayun po, what do you suggest sa mga parents na gustong mag-quad bike ang mga anak?
Okay. Ang ganda. You're putting me on the spot here, Kenzo. Pero that's why I'm here. So we will answer these difficult questions. Ang parati namin sinasabi, merong batas, kunwari batas ng Qatar, may batas ng bansa, at merong mga patakaran sa kada pamilya. Pero ang hindi mo ma-unbreak o ma-disregard na law is the law of physics.
Right.
So, ang quad bike, let's say, very high powered yun compared so hindi tayo magkaparehong timbang pero kunwari timbang ko
parang mas mabigat po yata
ako mga almost 100 kilos ako pag umupo ako sa quad bike, lapat ng quad bike, kaya kong galawin yung quad bike kung saan ako pupunta kasi may puwersa ako, meron akong bigat. Kung maglagay ka ng bata na 30, sabihin natin 25 kilos, wala siyang puwersa. So, mas mahirap siyang mag-control ng quad bike. Very, very difficult. Tapos, kung hindi pa niya gamay yung controls, hindi niya gamay yung brakes, first time niyang gagamitin, tumataas yung... And true enough, up to 1/4 of all of our victims, all of the victims in these 1,000 patients that we saw, that we studied, were children between the ages of 11 and 15. So, kahit sabihin mo, pag sinabi mo kasi children, mga 5 years old, hindi, 11 to 15-year-old, wala pa silang sapat na lakas, wala pa silang sapat na experience, Because sila nga one-fourth na, they're not one-fourth of the population of Qatar, ano? But they're one-fourth of the population na nasasaktan na habang naka-ATV.
I see. And especially itong mga machines na ito, no? Itong quad bike, very powerful yung machine. So, kahit sinong nag-ooperate, parang kailangan niya ng immediate decision sometimes to do. Kasi nga, I mean, ang laki ng machine at mabilis siya. So,
Yeah, because if you imagine, kung ikaw sanay na nagmaneho sabihin ng motorsiklo o ng sabihin natin magmaneho ng sasakyan, mas gamay mo. Pero an 11 or 15-year-old is not. And actually, the American Academy of Orthopedics has a recommendation that no child below the age of 16 should, should operate an ATV or a quad bike. And if ever they really have to, there must be a limitation on the displacement na tinatawag natin. Lower powered, less than 90cc dapat ang mga makina.
I see, okay.
So, I'll tell you, may mga horror stories kami. I will not get into the details, but we've had victims who are like 2 or 3 years old.
Wow. Oh.
And you'll wonder, ano yan? Nagmamaneho ng 2 or 3 years old, hindi sila yung nagmamaneho. Ang nangyari, ito papasok tayo sa next na risk factor is they were being transported on an ATV as a passenger. Now,
Okay.
I cannot emphasize this enough for all the families, for everybody listening. Quad bikes or ATVs are a one-man sport.
Right. Okay.
Because unless they're explicitly built for passengers, for more than one passenger, as in there are, if you have 2 seats, distinct seats, or 4 seats, meron ako nakikita na 4 seats, ano? But the usual ATV that you see in the rental has 1 seat and it's meant for 1 passenger. And again, if you think about it, again, 20% of all of our victims are passengers. So if people just stop, sinabi ko na, one-fourth to one-half of them, 11 to 15 years old. 1/5 of them, again, passengers. Kung tigilan lang natin yung mga bata na naka-ATV at yung mga pasahero, halos kalahati na ng nasasaktan bilang ATV victim. Natugunan na natin, di ba? So, this is very important. So, sa lahat ng mga magulang dyan, kahit sabihin natin talagang iniiyakan kayo ng anak nyo at lahat, unless tama ang sasakyan nyo, tama yung ATV nyo na nakaset na may 4 o 2 na upuan na pwedeng talagang upuan, hindi yung nakakandong o ano, huwag nyong isasakay mga bata. It's
Okay.
really very unsafe. And again, the numbers prove it. The data proves it.
Right. So, ngayon po na nasa midst pa din naman tayo ng pandemic with the COVID-19, do we think that there's a lesser number of injuries that we will be experiencing? Kasi nga, karamihan nagka-quarantine pa din. But since na bumababa na or medyo nagiging lenient na in terms of the restrictions, ang dami yatang gusto din lumabas. I don't know, based on your study or forecast, of course with the hospital, do we think that there will be more people engaging in outdoor activities right now during the winter?
So, ang una kong ma-report for sure is data from last year. Kasi
Okay.
kasi sinama na namin yung winter season ng November 2019 hanggang March 2020. So, inabot yon ng lockdown. So, sabihin ko sa March, halos walang nasaktan on ATVs.
Okay.
Tapos, this year, kayong araw lang, si Colonel Jabber, yung head ng Media and Traffic Awareness Section ng Ministry of Interior Traffic Department, he had a press release today. And they're saying that there are less people actually being injured in sea line. But it's not just because of COVID, it's not because of the lockdowns. Because I expected more actually. Kasi maraming di nakapag-travel this break. Diba? Maraming, kumbaga...
Isa po ako dyan.
Kasama rin ako
Gusto
dyan.
mag-travel, hindi makatravel.
Hindi tayo So mas marami, kung tutusin, mas marami time. So naghahanap ng mapag-aliwan, mapaglibangan na outdoors. So I expected, actually sabihin ko, baka yung unexpected natin is more. But to the credit of the traffic department and all of their partners, meron silang ronda doon sa designated areas sa sea line. Meron silang regular campaigns for education. Meron silang enforcement. So they're saying that bumaba actually ang numbers so far. The report up to, I think up to December 31 ang kanila for the 2 months, lumabas sa dyaryo today. So bumababa. So it's not so much COVID, but I think it's more vigilance from the traffic police.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yes.
Well, we will be going on a very short break, but later we will be discussing more about the safety measures that we can observe sa paggamit ng mga ATV at sa mga iba pang activities na meron tayong pwedeng gawin over the winter season. And of course, you are still tuned in to Qabayan Radio 94.3, and this is the very first episode of Usapang Qabayan. Here with us, Dr. Rafael Consunji, discussing what are the safety measures that we can observe para sa ating outdoor activities during the winter season. So if you have any questions that you would like our doctor to answer, you just have to send that to us. Of course, sa ating Facebook, pwede kayo mag-comment dyan sa ating comment section, or you can send a private message. And also, you can also join us sa ating chat room dyan sa www.kabayanfm.com chat room, at we will be interacting with you over there. But right now, we will just be going on a very short break, and we'll be back to you shortly.
Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Stay right here. In Qatar.
Qabayan Radio 94.3.
You are still tuned in to Qabayan Radio 94.3, here with me, Kenzo, for the Usapang Qabayan. And tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, we will be discussing more about the use of ATV, or yung mga proper use, and how to prevent, having some accidents or injuries sa paggamit ng mga ito. And joining us this evening once again is Dr. Rafael Consunji of Hamad Medical Corporation. So ayan, nabanggit po natin kanina na isa sa mga injuries na pwede nating magkaroon or pwede tayong magkaroon sa paggamit ng quad bike or ng ATV ay yung pagkakaroon ng brain injury. What are the other injuries na pwede pang magkaroon? Kasi actually meron akong kasama sa work na nagkaroon ng ganito, and apparently what happened was that nung nag-quad bike siya, of course going up the hill, and I think pumunta siya dun sa kabila, may cliff, so he rolled over, and then nauna pa siyang bumagsak kaysa sa quad bike, and then the quad bike crushed him, and yung ribs niya, so nagkabali-bali. So ay, yun yung isa sa alam ko na pwedeng maging aksidente sa paggamit ng quad bike. But are there any other things that we should look into?
So, depende actually sa mechanism, sabihin natin. Depende sa mechanism of injury. Pero, any part of your body can get injured in a quad bike, in a quad bike crash. But we're most concerned about two things, primarily your brain, your head, because we cannot repair the brain, nor can we repair your spinal cord. So these are the main things that and if you have an injury to your spinal cord, that can lead to paralysis, which can be lifelong paralysis. Now, every bone in your body can be broken in the event of a crash. Kung tumilapon ka, ibang mechanism. Kung nadaganan ka, gaya nga na sinabi mo sa kakilala mo, iba-iba yan. Tapos, sometimes even the simple act of getting thrown from the bike can cause a lot of abrasions, we'll call it, or a big let's call it, para nagasgasan yung buong katawan mo. Tapos yung toes, madalas yung toes na nasasabit. So rather than just describe kung ano yung pwedeng maging sabihin natin injury, isa-isahin natin what can we do para maiwasan ng mga yon.
Okay.
Nabanggit na natin earlier
yung paggamit pa ng helmet.
Napaka-importante noon. So mag-umpisa tayo doon sa itaas. Ang pag-suit ng goggles, napaka-importante. O yung shades na wrap around na tinatawag natin para close as possible. Kasi not only can you get an injury straight to your cornea or your eye, ang mga kasama natin ophthalmologists will testify to that, but pag mapasukan ka lang ng buhangin o ng alikabok habang nagmamaneho ka, mas likely na ma-out of control ka, di ba?
Right.
So napaka-important, you have eye gear all the time. Very important. And then, ito, sawang-sawa na tayo sa PPE. Itong COVID na to, PPE. Pero babanggitin ko, pero may PPE din na pag-drive ng ATV. So, dapat from head to toe. So we had started that with the helmet and the goggles. It's very advisable that you have full body coverage. Maganda man, malamig ngayon. So long sleeves at the least, long sleeve pants and long sleeve shirt to prevent. Kasi pwedeng tumilapon ka, mahulog ka, kung naka long sleeve ka na medyo may kakapalan, pwedeng hindi ka masaktan. Ano? Pwedeng
Right.
bugbog lang, hindi ka yung the big tinatawag
Hindi
natin
magagasgasan.
gasgas. Yeah, ang sakit nun. Parang tinilbol yung balat mo nun eh. So, kasi that's sand, ano? So that's one thing. And then, dapat parating nakasapatos. Yung mga mangled na toes, mga nawawala na toes actually, o para bang hinimay-himay na paa. Pag nakachinelas, mahilig yung iba nakachinelas lang, naka-flip-flops, mag-ATV. That's an absolute no-no. So
Kailangan po ba yung steel-toed shoes?
well,
ang
hindi
gamit?
naman hindi naman ganyan para sa work site, but just something that covers your toes and will
Okay.
protect them from getting caught up with everything else.
Okay.
And then the other thing also that we don't realize is the use of what we'll call reflectorized vests or something that's bright. So kung mamimili ka,
Okay.
ano bang, unless talagang ikaw ay tawag dito, nagsa-special operations habang naka-quad bike, huwag ka naman magsusot ng khaki o yung kulay buhangin, di ba? Para nakikita ka mula sa malayo. Magsuot ka ng yung matingkad na kulay, orange o yung may reflectorized vest para kita ka mula sa malayo.
I see.
The other thing also, pag gabi, medyo delikado rin kasi hindi lahat ng ATV may ilaw.
May ilaw.
So kung checkin mo, kung walang ilaw o kung inabot ka ng gabi, walang ilaw yung ATV mo, maghanap ka ng parang kahit pailawin mo siguro yung cellphone mo para nakikita ka mula sa malayo. Kasi yan yung isa pang dahilan na biglaan eh. Hindi ka naman nakikita ng ibang sasakyan, pwede ka matamaan. So these are the things. So increase your visibility so you're seen. So again, PPE is important. Tapos
Right.
yung lastly, gloves. Di ba? Nagano tayo, magsuot ng sapatos, magsuot ka rin ng guantes.
Okay.
Para pati ang daliri mo, also very protected as much as possible.
And yung nabanggit niyo po na kung walang ilaw yung ATV, pwedeng gumamit yung
Yung headlamp.
yung headlamp, no. So ayan
Headlamp
ang-
on your helmet.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It doesn't have to be very expensive naman itong mga gamit na to, no? But as long as it would protect your body from environmental elements.
Dadagdagan ko yung environmental elements. So,
Yeah.
isa pang nakita namin, and ito parang another no-brainer kung tutsin. 50% again of those who get injured on a Friday between 4 to 11 p.m.
Okay.
So, kunwari gusto ko talaga mag-ATV, kung hindi lang ako magpunta ng Biyernes ng hapon, mas ligtas na ako. Kinalahati ko ng risk ko, di ba? Now, why is that? Kasi on a Friday, there's what we call the unsafe mixing of different, let's call it, different vehicles. So, naandyan ang SUV na pagkalaki-laki, minsan may magdadalang motorsiklo,
Right.
may taong naglalakad, may ATV.
Right.
Pag pinaghalo-halo mo yun sa an unregulated environment na walang daan, di ba? Wala namang nakalagay na this way or wala namang lanes, wala namang roads yun. At pag umakyat ka nandun, hindi mo alam kung ano yung nasa kabila. So that's why it is the most dangerous time when there is the most density of
Yeah.
users of that area.
The influx of people,
Correct.
no? Especially on a weekend.
And different people driving different speeds, different sizes of vehicles with different levels of experience or expertise. It's a recipe really for something to happen. So if you can, agahan mo ng Biyernes, punta ka na umaga.
Okay. So yun po yung best time
Yeah,
to
that
do
would be
it.
a best time. Maganda, aliwalas, magandang panahon, hindi pa masyado maaning araw, pati sipin mo, you already reduced your risk by 50%.
Wow, that's a big
Oh.
percentage.
That's why actually even the traffic police has adapted to this and they increase their patrols on Friday afternoon because they know that people are there.
So that's from 4 p.m. po to
Mga
11
4 to
p.m.
11.
So just in case, yung mga nakikinig sa
Oo.
atin ngayon who are
So,
considering to
kung
go...
magpaplano kayo ng sa Biyernes naman lumakad sa sea line, agahan nyo. Gising na maaga. Tapusin nyo bago magtanghali, bago mag-alas 2, umalis na kayo.
Okay.
Para you avoid the crowds and you avoid the risk.
Okay, that's good to know. And are there like any other safety recommendations that you would like to share to our listeners? Nabanggit na kanina, no, lalo na yung pagkakaroon ng voluntary restrictions, lalo na kapag may anak ka din. So, meron po bang safety recommendations kayo na pwedeng maidagdag? Apart from, of course, yung pagsuot din ng PPE.
Yes. So, I will also add on that we also have a considerable number, mga 10 to 15% who get injured while doing stunt driving. Yung mga nagwi-wheelie, yun. Very
Okay.
common yun. Kasi you will be out of control. So, ang aming is leave the stunts to the professionals. Unless ikaw ay talagang dalubhasa at ilang taon ka nang nag-ATV, as much as possible, don't expose yourself unnecessarily to that risk. Because, 1 out of 10 of our injuries, as many as 1 out of 10, will do it while doing some stunt or some wheelie or trying to jump off at a certain height. So these are things that as much as possible, mapanganib na nga siya to begin with, wag mo nang dagdagan ng risk as much as possible.
Alright. So just to summarize lang po yung
Please.
sa pinag-uusapan natin about the use of the ATV or all-terrain vehicles o tinatawag din natin quad bike. So ang una natin nabanggit kanina is the parents and mga rental agencies na magkaroon ng pag-iingatal na to allow minors sa paggamit yan kasi malaki yung risk. And then the second is no passengers should be allowed to use on a quad bike. And then third is yung pag-avoid din ng peak hours when we do these activities. And nabanggit natin, Fridays from 4 p.m. up until 11 p.m. Ayan yung mga very risky na
Hora de
hours.
peligro, natawagin natin.
And also, wag gagamit ng mga quad bike na walang suot na PPE. And of course, that's from head to toe. So, kailangan, importante, meron tayong helmet, meron tayong goggles din po, ano? And then, guantes, we wear shoes, and mga long sleeve shirts, and then we wear pants. And then lastly, yung stunt driving nga. So we just leave it to professionals. So ayan ang ating mga discussion about
Pwede pa ba ako magpahabol ng isa pa, Kento?
Sure.
Ito, for all forms of driving, dapat hindi tayo impaired pag mag-drive tayo. Maging driving, pag-drive ka man ng bus, ng truck, ng motorsiklo, ng kung ano, ng ATV. So, ang impairment kasama doon, distraction. So, wag ka naman magte-text, di ba? Wag ka magte-text habang nag-ano. Number one. Pangalawa, wag mong gagawin na inaantok ka, pagod ka. Kasi you're impaired. You're an impaired driver under the influence of medications, drugs, or alcohol. All of these are no-nos. You do not do that. Do not operate any vehicle, any machinery, while any of these things, because if you're impaired, you're not a safe operator of that vehicle. So again, I'll emphasize, no distractions, no drugs, and don't be drowsy or sleepy.
Ang hilig pa naman nating mag-selfie, tayong mga Pilipino.
Pwede naman itabi, tapos mag-selfie ka.
Or baka
Stop it completely.
Or baka katulad ng ginagawa natin ngayon, naka-Facebook Live kasi tayo, baka mamaya may gustong mag-quad bike ng naka-Facebook Live. Ayan, iwasan po natin yan. And thank you for sharing those suggestions. But right now, we will be going on a very short break. And then after the break, of course, we still have Dr. Rafael Consunji to discuss what are the safety measures then that we can do while we are on camping. Ayan. Dahil marami sa atin ngayon ang nagka-camping na ngayon, nagpupunta sa dagat, nag-overnight hanggang umaga pa. So ayan, marami din ako invitations but I haven't been to any of camping activities yet. Hopefully soon. Ayan. So sa mga nag-invite sa akin dyan nung nakaraan na yan, invite nyo ulit ako. Now I know what are the safety measures to take kapag lumalabas. But we'll be discussing more of that shortly. But right now, we'll be going on a very short break, of course, only here for the Usapang Qabayan, the very first edition. And again, if you have any questions and there are things that you would like to ask our doctor, just hit us up on our social media accounts. Of course, that's on Facebook. You can also send us on Twitter and Instagram, and through our Qabayan website. That's at www.qabayanfm.com/radio, and we will be interacting with you over there. And right now, we'll be going on a very short break. We'll be back very shortly.
Qabayan Radio 94.3.
Of course, you are still tuned in to Qabayan Radio 94.3, your home, your music. And this evening, of course, we are here for the first episode or the pilot episode of Usapang Qabayan. And joining us this afternoon, or this evening rather, is still Dr. Rafael Consunji of Hamad Medical Corporation. And tulad nung sinabi ko bago tayo magkaroon ng short break is that we will be discussing yung sa ating pagka-camping. I know that a lot of you have been to the beach area or the camping areas in the past few weeks or the past few months kasi maganda-ganda na ang panahon. So ayan, I don't know kung anong mga camping activities ang ginagawa niyo, kung nagbe-beach ba or just nagka-crabbing kasi may mga mahilig sa ganyan So ayan, question po, Doc, what are the things that we should be looking into kapag tayo ay nagka-camping? Yung mga common na injuries na nangyayari sa mga camping.
So, pag camping related pag-uusapan natin, depende first yan sa location yon. So, kadalasan gusto nila magka-camp sa dagat, malapit sa dagat. So, that's one thing. So, ang una siguro dapat tiyakin natin bago tayo mag-set up ng camp ay unang-una, tama yung ating location. It's as much as possible within the prescribed place. Kasi for a number of reasons. One is, ibig sabihin dadaanan ng police patrol yun, which is a good thing. Ano? So they will be there to protect not only your safety but your security. So that's one thing that's very important. At number two, na hindi ka abutin ng kunwari ng baha or something that ng tide or something that will come. So you don't want to have the natural encroachment into your camping location. And then thirdly is that hindi ka daanan ng mga sasakyan.
Okay.
Kasi we have had a few people who are literally in their tents in the middle of the night, getting run over or getting impacted by vehicles coming into their tents and into their camps.
I see.
So we'll add on to that. Pag nag-set up ka ng camp, dapat meron kang visibility again. Dapat kasi if you cannot see, that you are seen at least. So meron kang provision para meron kayong marker, meron kayong ilaw na sets na this is a camp area, medyo mag-slow down ka kung meron sasakyan or anything. So these are the things that from the external standpoint and the regulatory and the legal standpoint you must think about when you set up your campsite.
I see. So meron po talagang regulations
And you have a permit
and law.
also. At yung permit,
Okay.
meron kang, minsan, and it depends on where you are, there are permits for that. If you're going to have it for long term. But usually, yung mga beach areas, hindi nila, nakakalusot ka na, it's not really that strict. It will depend. But to be on the safe side, it's better to inquire about whether it needs a permit or
I
not.
see. I think that's very important, lalo na kung medyo malaki-laki yung...
At malaking grupo.
malaking grupo.
So things like that.
Pero yung kapag kay mga tents na mga pang dalawa, tatlong
Ay,
tao, I think,
siguro.
yeah. And it's in a public beach.
Tapos, ang isa pang is that it's the cold season, so a lot of the injuries we see are related to trying to stay warm. So may
Okay.
dala kang either heater, meron kang heater na kung may generator ka, or magpapa ano ka ng campfire. So marami kaming nakukuha na, and at least most of them are minor, pero you cannot say that it never happens, but people get burns because of the proximity of the fire to their setup. Or minsan matutulog yan, katabi ang fire. So that's one thing, that whenever you set up a fire, whether it be for heating or for cooking, it must be a certain distance sa tirahan mo. Tapos, kung magdadala ka ng kerosene or anything that's incendiary, the requisites at least 2 to 3 meters, I think, distance. So the further, the better, of course. Pati yung sasakyan mo, ilayo mo na rin siguro sa source of fire. So these are what we'll call it, away from the source of heat, the potential source of burns and source of fires also. Yung iba rin, naglalagay pa ng fire sa loob ng tent. Now that's a no-no kasi pwede mag-accumulate ang carbon monoxide inside the tent, and you can have carbon monoxide poisoning within the tent. So unless siguro may tent ka na habong lang na walang sides, pwede pa siguro.
Right.
But it's still not advisable kasi pwedeng umabot yun sa bubungan ng tent mo. So the fire should not be inside the tent because of carbon monoxide poisoning. And then heating elements, whether it be electrical or open fire, should be away also from flammable materials, combustibles like kerosene, and from people, of course. So yun ang importante because that's what the common camping injuries are actually.
Actually, meron po akong funny story regarding dyan sa kerosene. Kasi when I was a teenager pa, matagal na to, as in sobrang tagal na. It was over 20 years ago. We went on a camp. It's actually a school camp. And then, of course, katabi ng tent namin ay yung mga ginagamit din namin pagluto, ganyan. So may kerosene din doon na nakalagay sa bote ng inumin. So, one of my classmates, nainom niya yung kerosene.
I hope
early in
not
the
too much,
morning.
Uhaw na uhaw siguro siya.
Yeah, pagising niya ng umaga, uminom siya. Ayun, hindi naman niya nalunok lahat. But yeah, I think that's one of the safety precautions then that we can also, try to consider is i-separate natin yung mga ginagamit for heating and yung mga cooking.
Panluto. Ganda. Against poisoning yun. Kasi pag maraming nainom niya, you can get up with kerosene poisoning.
How about po yung sa pagpunta sa beach?
Yan. So, unfortunately, dun ang nakakita kami ng reports na magkakaibigan nag-crabbing, may isa o dalawa na papasok tapos So, the first thing talaga is, as much as possible, do not do it alone. Kasi, kapag mag-isa ka, walang magsasaklolo, walang mag-a-alert ng kung sino magtatawag ng 999. So, that's very important. At if ever talagang giyang kang gawin mo, nagmamadali ka, mauuna ka, dapat may alam kung saan ka pupunta.
Right.
Those are very important things. Anything for drowning prevention. Tapos for 2,
Yung familiar po dun sa lugar na yun
yes.
mismo, ano?
Tapos number 2 is, again, balik tayo sa bata. Ang mga bata dapat always supervised kapag may tubig. Kahit sabi mo, ang lamig ngayon, walang papasok sa tubig. Ang bata pag nakakita ng tubig, attracted din kaagad sa tubig. So, as much as possible, merong designated adult whose job is to do nothing but to watch the children.
Okay.
Kasi minsan, and the very common scenario na nakikita namin,
Bawal masyadong magsaya yung parents, ano?
may isa lang. Yan, di ba, narinig natin yung designated driver, di ba?
Right.
O, lalabas tayo ngayon, ikaw designated driver. Hindi ka masyado masaya ngayong gabi, sabihin natin.
Kasi hindi ka pwedeng...
Oo, hindi ka pwede mag-imbibe, sabihin
Yeah.
natin. Pero ang tinatawag natin designated watcher, ito yung ina-endorse kasi the very common scenario is magpapamilya o 3-4 na pamilya, magbabarkada, magkakaibigan, yung iba may anak, yung iba wala. Siyempre magsasama-sama yung mga adults, iba yung kanilang and then the older kids and the younger kids. So minsan hindi na antabayanan pala. So kumbaga, sasabihin natin, Kenzo, 2 to 4 p.m., ikaw ang designated watcher. So naandun ka, ang sole responsibility mo is to watch the children. Just for 2 hours. Para bang it's quota mo. So, mahaba siguro 2 hours. 1 hour ka lang, Kenzo. 1 to 2 p.m., ikaw ang watcher ng children. Tapos, hindi ka alis hanggat dumating yung karelyebo mo. Kasi, ang madalas yan, naglilipat-lipat ang mga parents, ang mga nag-attend ng party o nag-attend ng gathering, hindi na antabayan. May maiiwan, may hindi masusupervise. So, the idea of a designated watcher is gaining more popularity in a lot of Western settings. Kasi you're able to provide adult supervision. And there's actually some people who say there has to be a ratio. Kunwari, mahigit 10 yung mga bata at 2 na dapat ang designated watcher mo yun. So, that's another thing to prevent the children from getting into the water and having drowning or near drowning events. Very important. Idadagdag ko pa isa, syempre, magka-camping tayo, balak mag-crabbing. Merong magdadala ng, sabi natin, beverages that may affect your so do not go into the water once you're under babalik na naman tayo sa impairment, ano?
Right.
So impairment is not a good thing when driving a vehicle or when going into the water.
Right. And especially, dapat din, I think, alam kung anong oras yung high tide at
Yes.
low tide. Kasi parang may mga narinig akong ganyan dati na... Naabutan. And ayun, biglang nawala na sila doon. Hindi nila alam din kasi hindi nila makita na kung paano bumalik dun sa Pampang ba tawag doon. Basta sa gilid, sa shoreline. So ayun, naabutan na sila doon sa gitna ng tubig. So I think that's one of the things that they should also look into before they even
Correct.
Do the particular activity.
Mas maganda meron kang kasama who's been there before na alam yung takbo ng tide at lahat, yung low tide at high tide.
Right. Meron po tayong question dito. Parang is it as advisable to extinguish the fire outside your tent before you sleep?
Hoy, very good. That's a very, very good suggestion. Very, very good recommendation. At dito, hindi naman tayo nagkukulang sa buhangin, ano? So, you have to, the best way na patayin ang apoy, tapunan mo ng buhangin.
Okay.
So, talagang you will deprive it of oxygen and it's a limitless resource in this country. Gusto mo tubig, sige tubig, pero mas madali, buhangin lang. But correct, bago magkalimutan, before everybody goes to bed, tiyakin dapat yan. Again, merong isang designated na, ikaw ngayong gabi, kunwari 2-3 campfire nyo, patayin lahat, isa o 2 tao. The responsibilidad, the fire watcher naman. Kasi, it has to be a community, it has to be a communal spirit among the people who go na. We're watching out for each other. We want to make sure that we are able to have fun, but we're able to enjoy ourselves.
Right. And meron lang din akong question. Ayan, meron po ba tayong dapat na bitbitin ng mga, kumbaga, kits para just in case there are accidents that happen, meron ba tayong mga first aid kit na dapat? At ano po ang laman ng first aid kit kung sakali?
Ang pinaka-basic siguro that I will advise is meron kang tubig na malinis. At the very least, to wash off a burn or to wash off a wound, a laceration. So that's the first thing. So meron kang, hindi kailangan ng alcohol or some antiseptic, kahit water lang initially. And then, meron kang malinis na, sabihin natin, bimpo, tuwalya, na pwedeng ipang dress. Kasi, washing it off and then putting that on will protect it from further injury, A. B, it will protect it from contamination. And then, it can also even act to reduce a little bit of the pain. So that's very important. Medyo advanced na to, pero minsan may nagre-recommend na ng matuto tayo lahat na mag-tourniquet. I'm not sure kung familiar kayo sa tourniquet. Yun yung parang pipihitin mo. Kunwari, may sugat ako sa kamay, lakas ng dugo, Dugo talaga kahit i-press ko ng So it might help na meron kang parang tourniquet na ilalagay dito sa further up para mapapigil ng konti yung blood flow para mag-slow down yung
Okay.
But this is only a temporary measure. Remember, here, ang laki ng tiwala, I will tell you, the ambulance service here in Qatar is one of the world's best, if not the world's best. And they are there in those areas that are remote, they're there in sea line, they're in the camping areas.
Right.
Do not hesitate. As long as you have cell service, 999. Okay, yung sinasabi ng no fight to stay alive, they are very reliable. Again, world standard, world best probably. Make sure, ang dami tayong kabayan sa ambulance service. So make sure, maasahan ng mga yan. If there's anything, temporary measures lang tayo, but it's getting out of hand, don't hesitate, call 999.
Alright. Yeah, thank you for that information. So before we just wrap up this particular subtopic that we have patungkol sa camping, let us just summarize po.
Please.
No? So earlier we said that if we are going to set up a camp, one of the things that we should consider is maybe looking into a permit if it's required doon sa lugar na yon, lalo na kung we are setting up a big camping site. And second is that we should ensure na ang ating camp ay well lighted, so at least nakikita tayo or visible tayo from others, just to make sure na hindi tayo mababangga na sasakyan or whatever. And then also we should also consider ang ating mga daladalang gamit, of course, separating ang ating heating equipment sa tent, lalo na kung gagamit tayo ng apoy, ay ilabas natin yan. Huwag sa loob ng tent, because not only that we can get a risk of getting burned, but also inhaling yung mga elements or substances from the fire. And also yung mga gamit natin, ihiwalay natin yung panluto, ihiwalay natin yung
Heating and eating.
Yeah, heating and eating kasi baka
Ihiwalay natin.
kasi may nangyaring ang ganyan, nakakilala ko na pagsama niya.
From your personal experience.
And
okay.
also if we are going to go crabbing, ayan, just make sure that you know the place very well. You check the time, kung anong oras ang high tide, lalong-lalo na. And dapat meron din tayong suot na mga equipment na, like for example, a headlamp, so at least we know where we are going, and pati yung mga tinatapakan natin kasi baka mamaya may mga elements din doon. And then if there's anything that you would like to add on that.
Ang idadagdag ko lang, don't go alone.
Yes. And
If you must go alone, make sure somebody knows where you are going and how to get in touch with you, where your general location is. Para kasi it's a let's call it, gives you a little bit of allowance, gives you a little bit more of a security blanket.
Right.
If somebody knows where you are or somebody is with you, mas maganda yung sinabi mo earlier na maganda is, mas maganda yung dadali mo yung nakapunta na nun dati. Na medyo
Right.
kabisado, bihasa na siya sa area.
right. And of course, yung pagkakaroon din ng designated watcher.
Yeah.
Na hindi naman kailangan na siya lang talaga yung all throughout, no? But you can assign each person na tag-iisang oras, 'di ba? Or tagdadalawang oras. But before we end this particular segment, may humabol kasi na question.
Sure.
From A3D, siya din yung nag-message kanina nung una nating question. Sabi niya, Doc Rafi or Doc Rafael, if we are in a very unlikely situation during a camping situation, what are the hotlines that we should always have in mind?
Here, maganda dito sa Qatar. Isa lang ang number natin, 999.
So that's the only number.
One number will help you. So that's the number to know, 999, and then as much as possible, know where your location is so you can give them good directions as to where to go.
Right.
To pick you up, to provide you with your help that you need.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much for that information. And right now, we will be going on a very short break, and then we will be discussing more yung ating pag-enjoy during the winter. And later, we will be discussing about safe road use in a foggy weather. So right now, we'll be going on a short break. Of course, you are still tuned in to Qabayan Radio 94.3 for the very first or the pilot episode of Usapang Qabayan. Once again, my name is Ken, so I'll be back with you together with Dr. Rafael Consunji shortly.
This
Drive. And right now, we will be discussing what are the safety or the safe road use in a foggy weather. So, ayan. Doc, matanong ko lang po, what are the general principles of road use in a foggy weather?
ang foggy weather, kung unless lumaki tayo sa Baguio, hindi siguro tayo sanay sa foggy weather. Aminin natin, mga swerte natin kabayan na taga Baguio na sanay na sa foggy weather. So kadalasan, karamihan sa atin, this is the first time makakita. At yung fog dito, hindi katawa-tawa. Yung fog dito, hindi ka makakita sa more than 1 meter siguro sa harap ng sasakyan mo. So, the first thing that you have to think about pag naka-enkwentro ka ng foggy weather is, pwede ko bang i-delay itong trip ko? Maging pang road trip o maging papasok ako sa opisina, papasok ako sa trabaho. Kasi, again, balik tayo. Kung hindi ako ligtas na makakapagtrabaho, hindi ako ligtas na makakapag-enjoy ng road trip, then it's not worth it. Ano? So, the first thing is to realize, ang fog, that will blow off, that will disappear in sometimes as soon as 15 to 30 minutes. So, if it can be delayed, kasi ang foggy weather is considered a low or a no visibility situation. So, in such a situation, you cannot ensure yourself that you will be safe, and you don't know if you don't know what you see. I always say, see and be seen. Kung wala kang makita at hindi ka rin makita, di dumoble ng yung ano, no? So, and we do have a spike. Thankfully, not so much of injuries, pero if you ask the police, dumadami yung mga tinatawag natin fender benders na, uy, nandiyan ka pala. Hindi naman, wala, hopefully kasi kakaunti ang tao na nagmamaneho ng mabilis. So, kunwari, mamaneho kan 20 or 15, hindi mo na malaya, may katabi ka na fender benders. But that's very, very, so the first is, ask yourself, can I delay my trip? And then if your trip is absolutely mandatory, kaya papasok ka, ang payo ko is, pagkuha ka na tumabi ka, kuha ka na retrato ng kalagayan mo at that point in time. Padala mo sa boss mo, padala mo sa supervisor, padala mo sa kasama mo sa trabaho, or padala mo sa nag-iintay sa'yo sa road trip. Ang tindi ng fog dito. Give me 15:30. I'm going to be late. Para ma-warningan mo sila in advance. Kasi ang masama na kombinasyon, nagmamadali ka at wala kang makita. Can you imagine? Sabihin ko, magmaneho ka papasok ng trabaho, magpikit ka. Ganun ang katumbas ng driving in foggy weather. So it's very important that you tinatawag ko, document the delay. So talagang katunayan, meron akong matinding fog dito. Boss, 30 minutes ako madidelay. I hope you understand.
Well, some people are thinking na since meron namang fog lighting sa kanila, baka pwede na. Okay lang mo ba yun?
Buti din alam mo yung fog light. So I'll tell you, kung magtanong ka sa opisina namin, nagtanong ako sa mga teammates ko, nagtanong ako, siguro 80% mahigit, hindi man lang alam, ano ba yung fog light? Unless lumaki ka talaga sa area na talaga nagfa-fog. So, ang thought process kasi, ang fog light is not so much to see, but to be seen. So, ang kaibahan ng, and I encourage everybody na who's listening, labas muna kayo sa garahe nyo sandali, or tignan nyo sa internet, manual, tas lagay mo sa sasakyan mo, tas lagay mo fog light, para mabasa nyo yung portion ng manual na tungkol dun sa fog light. Kasi the fog light is not intended for you to see better. It's intended for you to see. So actually, ang focus ng fog light, pababa. Kasi kung pataas siya like your normal headlights, nagre-reflect yan off the fog. So mas masama nga, mas splatter yung light, hindi mo makita. So it's supposed to be facing downward, so you to be seen, and to illuminate the road also for you, but only within the immediate area around your car. So the fog light will help you to be seen and see the immediate area around your car, but it will not allow you to drive at 60 kilometers or 80 kilometers like you normally do on the way to work.
Right.
So that's not an answer to the low visibility.
I-connect ko na lang din po dito, kasi may mga iba na gumagamit ng hazard light. And actually, this is a question from Camille. Sabi niya, should we use emergency lights when driving on a foggy weather?
Maraming salamat, Camille, na tinanong mo yan. Common misconception yan, I will tell you. So, the prescribed or the recommended use of your hazard lights, as we call it, is to indicate that you are driving, either you're driving very slow or that you're immobilized. So, the very slow is like less than 10 kilometers per hour. Now, if you have to drive less than 10 kilometers per hour in foggy weather, then it might be better for you to get off to the side of the road as much as possible at saka ka mag-hazard lights para hindi ka mabangga. Now, yung tumatakbo ka with your hazard lights is one thing. It's not encouraged or recommended kasi nga people think that you're stopped. So that's one thing. Tapos two, it does not allow you to signal your intentions or to use your signal lights. Kasi 'di ba, lahat yan, apat na yan, yung both sides naka-on eh. So kunwari, hindi ko alam ngayon, naka-hazard light ka, kakaliwa ba to, kakanan ba to, saan ba to pupunta, hindi ko alam. So hindi ko matansya, pwede ba ako mag-overtake? So
Right.
that's the problem with the hazard lights. So again, the recommendation for foggy weather is do not use your hazard lights unless you're going to go off the road, stop your car on the side and leave it or stay inside the car para nakikita yung sasakyan mo at alam nila, okay, that is a stalled car. Nakatigil ang sasakyan na yan. Kasi habang tumatakbo ka, kailangan mo yung signal light mo. Mas importante na makapag-signal ka sa ibang motorista na I'm going to turn. Kasi mawawala nga yung kakayahan mo mag-signal habang naka-hazard light ka. So, again, the global recommendation, like you said earlier, Kenzo, turn on your fog lights. If you go to use your headlights, use them on low kasi the bright will be very bright. Kasi sabi mo, uy, napakasama ng visibility, iba-bright ko. Ikaw masisilaw kasi magre-reflect off the fog, pati mga parating na sasakyan masisilaw. So, low lights or fog lights at the least, no hazard lights, make full use of your signal lights for every turn and every change in direction you make.
That's a very good suggestion, no? Lalo na yung paggamit ng headlights kasi iba nagbe-bright pa talaga, yung pinakamalakas.
Kasi ibang kalaban ng fog hindi kadiliman ng kalaban mo eh. It's nakita naman natin fog mist eh. So it has a tendency to reflect and
To reflect the light.
To what they call refract and to spread the light. So it's not good to spread to shine a bright light on the fog.
So mas lalong mahihirapan in short
ikaw
na drive.
pati yung ibang tao.
Right. And also, curious lang po ako regarding dyan sa paggamit ng hazard or ng emergency lights. Is there like any law or rule na bawal gumamit ng hazard light kapag tumatakbo? Kasi I don't know about the rules here in Qatar, but and I'm also not sure whether you have familiarity about this particular type of law or kasi nabanggit lang natin kanina was recommendation. So, is there like any sort of restriction sa paggamit ng hazard lights?
Binasa ko yan, Kenzo, talagang tinignan ko. So, kanya-kanya, kahit sa US, every state has a different rule. Kanya-kanyang bansa may kanya-kanya. But the general, nakikita ko, and nakikita ko more for yung malalaking truck. At yan, yung mga kabayan natin ng mga nagmamaneho ng truck can chime in, magbigay sila ng anong alam nila sa batas sa Qatar. Pero, there is no rule in Qatar na alam ko that bans the use of hazard lights. But the global recommendation is, if you are on the slow lane and you are driving slow, as in significantly slower than what is the set speed limit or below between 10 to 20 kilometers per hour. And you've seen that, yung mga malalaking truck na heavy goods talaga, mabigat ang dinadala na construction. Sadya sila naglalagay ng hazard lights para ma-warning ang lahat ng tao. Napakabagal ko, sige, mauna na kayo.
I see.
But in fact, really, it's not at all recommended. Not
Actually,
recommended.
kasi parang karamihan dito gumagamit ng hazard lights kapag fog.
Itatranspose yan sa pag umuulan ng malakas. Hindi naman madalas umulan ng malakas dito. Pero minsan, yung iba nga naka-hazard lights again. Again, dapat kasi, ang rule, again, most global road laws will say, if you have to use your wipers, turn on your lights, but not your hazard lights. Just your regular low beam.
Okay.
So you can be seen. Kasi, unless again, you're really traveling at a very slow speed and you don't intend to move. Pinakamagandang use of, if you're going to be moving in with your hazard lights, is you're in the rightmost lane, the slowest lane. And then, so you're telling people, mabagal ako, pwede kayo mag-overtake. But otherwise, it's not recommended. Lalo kung gumagalaw ka between lanes, naka-hazard ka,
Right.
very confusing, di ba?
Right.
I don't know if you're signaling or not.
Right. And curious lang din po ako, kasi usually kapag may ganitong foggy weather, ang nagiging basis natin kung gaano kakapal yung fog is yung percentage ng visibility. So sometimes we say it's 30% visibility or 10% or zero visibility. Is there like a particular percentage wherein pwede natin consider 30% lang pwede ako mag-drive nito or 50% pwede ako mag-drive nito? Kasi minsan, ako ganun yung iniisip ko. Pag sinabing zero visibility, hindi talaga ako magdadrive. But, like for example, if it's 20%, 30%, or 50%, is that a good measure para tayo ay mag-consider na ituloy ang ating pagdadrive?
I'm not sure if there's a visibility scale for fog actually na hindi siguro ka pa rin mga sa piloto, di ba? We have a visibility of 3 miles. Hindi yung parati marinig sa...
Right.
Hindi yata ganoon for fog actually. That's one thing. Tapos two is, if you think about it, if you have any doubts sa akin talaga is, it's sort of a gut feel. Makikita mo. Pati, pwedeng ko anong visibility ko dito, within 50 meters or 100 meters. Minsan kasi napansin mo, parang ang linaw ko saan ako nagmamaneho, pero kung sumilip pa sa loob ng mga neighborhoods to your right or to your left, ang tindi ng fog doon. So, it's a little difficult to forecast na from point A to point B, clear ang lahat ng way ko. You could still run into fog, and it could be different levels of fog. Pero I will encourage you to just err on the side of caution. Kunwari yan, hindi na yata ako nakakakita ng maigi, I will move to the side and wait 5-10 minutes and see if it will clear. Kasi more so kung usually pag maaga ka umalis ng bahay, nakikita ka ng fog. Kasi pag the sun comes up, the condensation and everything and the temperature change will have the fog sort of settle on its own. Here unfortunately 7 o'clock ang showtime natin, most of us to go to work or earlier. So that's hora de peligro.
Right.
Yung I know, like kunwari magmamaneho ka ng Padukan papuntang Cuban, yung area na yan, yung buong highway na yan, minsan grabe ang fog dyan. As in, you see some zero visibility,
Right,
and zero
right.
visibility.
Right. But of course, sabi natin kanina, dapat yung sa visibility, no? Are there any other senses na pwede natin gamitin kapag ganitong sitwasyon?
Ako, kapag yun nga, kasi may dinadaan na kaming malilit na neighborhood bago ako makaabot sa main road mula sa aking tinitirhan, ano? So, I roll down my windows actually.
Okay.
And I turn off the radio. Sorry, I turn off Qabayan. I turn off the radio. Kasi
Well, wala naman pong fog ngayon. So, the listeners are still hearing us right now.
So I can hear. Don't underestimate the power of your hearing, because sometimes I've robbed you of your sense of sight, but I've not robbed you of your sense of hearing. You might hear an engine before you see the car coming. So I tell my children, shh, quiet muna tayo. Roll down the windows and you listen before you go forward. Lalo, magko-cross ka ng intersection, di ba? Or you're going to cross the street. Wala ka halos makita. Well, either the best thing is go to the side of the road and wait. But if you want to proceed, using your ears is an additional sense that's very, very important to use.
Right, that's good to know. But are there also some recommendations that you have, apart from, syempre, sa mga drivers, meron din tayong mga driver ng kotse, no? Meron din ba tayong recommendations dun sa mga nagmumotor, nagbabike, and also the pedestrian who are walking?
So, ito naman, iba naman ng pedestrian, iba naman ng unahin natin yung motor. Kita natin yung mga talabat, naka-bright color sila, naka-reflectors.
Right.
That doesn't work, unfortunately, in the fog. Hindi yan lumalabas sa foggy weather. So, ang importante, running lights. Naka-on yung kanilang headlights, low beam again, para nakikita sila. Para it will register in the sense of sight of the driver, whoever else is using the road. So, the reflector will not work. So, that's one thing. Ngayon, ang bisikleta, normally, ang bisikleta dito, wala namang ilaw. No? Magdala ka ng ilaw. Again. You can make it a flashing light. Some bikes have that red flashing light, but kasi pag isa lang naman, alam natin di sasakyan yun, di ba? Pag dalawa, alam mo sasakyan. So, a single flashing light on the bike is also very useful. And again, if you can have a headlight, like you sinabi mo earlier, yung headlamp, that could be useful also. And even for a pedestrian, kunwari kailangan ka talagang maglakad pa, syempre as much as possible, stay off the road, stay on the sidewalk. Dapat alam mo, sa dinami-dami ng construction dito sa Qatar, street road construction, alam mo anong nilalakaran mo. Baka pumasok ka na lang bigla sa kung anong hukay, anong nakabungkal dyan in the...
Right.
So make sure you're on the sidewalk, make sure you've got a light on also. Unfortunately, in this case, reflectors will not work. So again, maybe your cell phone will be enough.
Some flashlight yung cellphone.
May flashlight naman cellphone. So turn it on para nakikita kayo. Yung problema lang, kailangan makikita kayo sa likod or sa harap. So ang pinakamaganda is you walk actually facing the traffic para nakikita mong parating ang, even if you're on the sidewalk, parating ang ilaw, pati nakikita nila, hawak mong paharap yung ilaw mo. So,
actually, with or without the fog, parang yun ang magandang suggestion.
yes, walk facing traffic as much as kung walang sidewalk. But the best pa rin is on the sidewalk. So, iba-ibang klase ng road user, iba-iba yung ating sasabihin na tawag dito na precautions. Now, ipa-plug ko yung aking parating pina-plug. Maging sino ka man, maging saan ka man sa sasakyan, dapat naka-seatbelt ka. Kaysa may fog, kaysa wala. Kasi ang seatbelt napaka-importante. Kahit maging nasa likuran ka, nasa harapan ka, sabihin natin ang batas sabi sa harapan lang naka-seatbelt. Babalik na naman tayo sa laws of physics. Kapag tinamaan ang sasakyan nyo, lahat kayo tumitilapon. Ang mga hindi naka-seatbelt, mas matindi ang tilapon, mas matindi ang injury.
Right.
At pwedeng maging dahilan kayo na masaktan ng mga kasamahan nyo may seatbelt. So, regardless again, more so in foggy weather, when it's extra, let's say, mas peligroso, don't forget to put a seatbelt on.
Right. And again, the best suggestion is to delay. Yung parang yun talaga yung
Delay kasi it's not worth it. Being 15 minutes late, sabihin natin 30 minutes late, and you're there in one piece, is priceless.
Right. Of course, we're still discussing about safety, lalo-lalo na sa kapanahunan ng winter season. And kanina nga lang ay pinag-uusapan natin ang about sa pagdadrive sa foggy weather. And right now, we will be going on a very short break. Actually, may question pala last. But I think I'm not sure whether this has been answered earlier. But sabi niya, how about being in a high beam mode? Is it an option, especially when visibility is close to zero?
Actually, yun nga, yung pinag-usapan natin earlier, ang kadiliman or darkness, ibang response siya sa high beam. Ang high beam lumulusot sa darkness. Unfortunately, hindi lumulusot ang high beam sa fog. It actually gets refracted and dispersed. So,
Right.
it does not help you because you end up with the light reflected back at you, and it does not help other motorists or road users. So, we
Right.
really do not encourage. So, low beam and fog lights, or fog lights.
Right.
So, buksan nyo na habang naka-brake, buksan nyo yung mga manual ng sasakyan nyo, basahin nyo yung instructions for fog lights.
All right. Thank you for that information. And right now, we will be going on a very short break. And once we get back, we will be discussing more about the safe use of heating equipment, lalong-lalo na sa ating mga bahay. May mga ibang bumili na ng heater kasi nilalamig na. So pag-uusapan natin kung paano tamang gamitin yan. Of course, you are still tuned in to Qabayan Radio 94.3 for the Usapang Qabayan. Here with me, Kenzo, and our guest for this evening, Dr. Rafi from Hamad Medical Corporation. We'll be back shortly after this break. Still tuned in to Qabayan Radio 94.3. Here with me, Kenzo, for the Usapang Qabayan, our very first episode. And of course, here with us as our guest is Dr. Rafi from Hamad Medical Corporation. And earlier, we just discussed yung mga ibang bagay na nai-enjoy natin kapag ka-winter. Kasama na nga dyan ang pag-camping, gamit ng ATV or quad bike, and also ang pagro-road trip at pagdadrive sa foggy weather. And right now, tulad ng nabanggit ko before tayo mag-break, pag-usapan naman natin yung mga heating equipment sa loob ng bahay. And of course, Dr. Rafi is here with us to discuss about the safety measures that we can use sa ating heating equipment sa ating bahay. Ayan.
Malamang marami na sa inyong may space heater na tinatawag sa bahay kasi medyo lumalamig na, lalong lalamig yan sa kasagsagan ng Enero hanggang siguro early February, ano? So, ang space heater, tandaan natin, is meant to be used only as a space heater. So, yun yung number one is, marami kasing tao na may ginagawa na kakaiba sa mga space heater, ginagamit na para magtuyo ng mga damit. That's not a recommended use. Or minsan may kilala ko na ginagamit niya pang-init ng pagkain. Minsan pinapatong niya yung mga lalagyan ng pagkain niya. So,
nasanay po yata sa Pilipinas kasi sa Pilipinas kahit yung mga damit hinahangat sa likod ng ref.
Kasi dito ibang heat na dinudulot ng space heater. So we have to realize na we should only use it for the recommended use, which is as a space heater, and then read the manual again. There's a designated distance that we must maintain between the space heater and either ourselves, and again, we'll go back to the point about combustible material. So, kahit anong papel, damit, kurtina, kahoy, sofa, lahat yun pwedeng potentially combustible materials. Kailangan may yung tama, yung nakataktang puwang mula sa space heater at yun. So, that's something that's very important. Kasi, anong kinatatakot natin? Ang kinatatakot natin, nakatulog tayo, naiwan natin yung space heater beside something that is combustible, and it gets set something on fire. And habang ang sarap ng tulog natin and all, ma-engulf yung ating tinitirhan ng fire. So we do not want that to happen. That's very important. So that's why we actually ask people that they make sure what the distance is that's allowed. Pangalawa, bibili lang tayo ng space heater na may tinatawag na Underwriters Laboratory or yung UL certification. Para alam natin that it is a certified product that meets certain the international safety standards. That means that tama yung rating. And ito, mga electricista natin, mga electrical engineers dyan, na the rating of the wire and the insulation is such that it can take the amount of power or current that goes through it and the amount of heat that is generated. Kasi if we buy a non-certified product, then para tayong nagsusugal.
Alright.
Kumbaga, ayaw natin na kahit sino man na magsusugal, yung isusugal mo, masunog ang bahay mo at pati ikaw ba, pwede kang...
Ano po yung kailangan na certification na makita natin sa...
Meron silang sinasabi. Depende sa iba-iba. The most common is UL na tinatawag. Or tanongin mo yung nagbebenta sa'yo, sino nag-certify nitong heater na ito? Kasi kasama na din doon yung the plug is certified, the wire, lahat yan certified, lahat yan nakaset sa recommended use. Now, they can only assure you that it's safe if you continue to use it in the recommended way. So, gaya sinabi, ginamit mo para matuyo ang mga tuwalya mo, something might either mabasa, ma-short circuit ka, or masunog ang mga tuwalya. So that's something that you have to watch out for.
Is there a specific time frame na pwede mo lang gamitin yung machine?
There are some that actually have heaters, have timers that will set it, that it will automatically shut off when it reaches a certain temperature. And that's actually the best one that you can buy.
Okay.
Yung meron siyang auto shut off mechanism. May iba na meron kang pwede ka mag-set ng heater, pero ang heater is weird, ano? So, 'di ba ikaw matutulog ka, medyo warm ka pa, pero minsan magigising ka sa very early sa umaga na lamig na, sobrang lamig na. So actually ang kailangan mo is, kasi it gets colder as the night progresses, 'di ba? Sa madaling araw, mga 13, 14 ang temperature, doon mo siguro kailangan yung added heating. So, maganda siguro is there are again prescribed ways that you can set up on a plug the heater for it to turn on later on. So baka hindi mo kailangan ng heating now.
Alright.
Bili ka ng certified plug again na may timer. Alam niyo 'yun, 'di ba? Kahit anong major appliance center will sell you those plugs na isi-set mo, turn on in 3 hours kunwari. So habang umaga, paggising mo lalo, may heater ka. But again, dapat ang set mo ng space heater mo nakatakdang distance from everything around it.
Mga gaano po kalaki? Lalo na kung halimbawang sa matutulog ka, gaano po siya kalayo dapat sa
I
kama?
would say it depends again on the amount of heating that it provides, but a meter is probably the safe distance at least. Para ka nag-physical distancing. Parang may COVID yung space heater mo. Dapat may kalayuan ka rin sa space heater mo. So dapat may physical distancing yung space heater mo and anything that is combustible.
I see. Okay. Kasi actually, medyo concerned din ako dyan. Kasi before, I used to have a heater. Kasi yung kwarto ko dati, kung saan ako nag-stay before, yung dati ko tinitirahan, yung lamig, as in talagang dun pumapasok lahat yung hangin, parang dun papunta lahat sa kwarto, kahit anong gawin kong seal, parang sobrang lamig ng kwarto. So I had to buy a heater. And unfortunately, this is not the high quality type of heater. And ang nangyari, actually nag-melt yung kasi yung cover niya, plastic, parang plastic yung lang yung casing. So nag-melt yung
So medyo napatagal siyang naka-on.
Yes. So ayun nga, buti na lang din wala siya sa tabi ng hinihigaan ko kasi nga delikado. But are there any other precautions that we should observe sa pagpapainit ng ating kabahayan?
Before you start that, tandaan niyo yung that the space heater is a huge, and again, mga electrical engineers natin in the audience can back me up on this, it's a huge, it uses a large amount of power. So, kailangan tiyakin mo na ang sasaksakan mo na outlet is right for that kind of an appliance, and or siya lang ang appliance doon. Kasi kunwari nakasaksak, di ba naka-extension ka pa di ba?
Right.
Tapos nandyan yung TV mo, andyan yung laptop mo, andyan lahat. Yung charger ng mga telepono at yung iPad mo, yun. Pag pinagsama-sama mo yun, that is a recipe for disaster. Kasi you will overload, and that again increases your chance of an issue. Ngayon, dapat chine-check mo rin yung wire. Always before you turn it on, make it routine, you check the wiring na hindi luray-luray yung wiring, hindi nasisira yung plug. Kasi again, pwedeng pagsimulan niya ng Tapos, as we did in the previous topics, kailangan pag-usapan natin mga bata. Kasi, isipin mo, naka-on yung heater mo, space heater mo, mga 2 hours na. Ano kaya temperature nun? Meron kang toddler, sabihin natin, 1 or 2 years old, just starting to walk. Siyempre, curious siya. Ang ganda nito, mainit. So, you must find a way to keep the area around the heater, make a safe zone so your child is not involved or not able to gain access to it as much as possible. Okay. Easier said than done, pero napaka-importante kasi the last thing you want to see is you see a child burned.
Yeah.
That's really very tragic. So as much as possible, kailangan, ang pwedeng sa atin kasi may mga halang, may mga ganun, yan yung tawag namin nung bata ko, may halang, so pwede ka maglagay siguro ng mga silya na nakapagpaligid na silya, but again with the proper distance, or tawag dito, kailangan sasabihin mo talaga yung bata, tuturuan mo, and to keep a physical barrier so she or he cannot make it to touch that machine. Kasi it's a very unfortunate, but children do get involved with space heater issues. So as much, yan lang idadagdag ko na pwede natin pag-usapan in terms of space heater. So get a recommended and a certified space heater. Make sure you're plugging it into an outlet that can take the power as much as possible. Sinabi, wag octopus, wag natin lagyan ng lahat ng pwede nating appliances sa isa-isa. Before you turn it on, check the wiring, check that everything is intact. If you can get a plug attachment that will regiment the number of hours, because if it doesn't have an auto shut off mode, then you can program in that auto shut off by simply buying that device that plugs into the wall, and you can set how many hours it will be on or not.
Right.
And then lastly, siguro don't forget the young children more so, that they can be attracted to it, and if unless they're physically separated from the space heater, they can become an unwilling or unwitting victim of a scald or very nasty burn from the space heater.
Yeah, thank you very much for that information. Right now, it is actually already 8:23 in the evening, and we will be ending in a few minutes. In the last 7 minutes na lang ang remaining. Ang bilis ng oras. Yes. Nakakagulat. But before we summarize yung ating pinag-usapan, meron lang po kasing isang activity madalas gawin ng ating mga kabataan ngayon. At usong-uso to. At ito yung e-scooter. What are the safety recommendations for e-scooters?
The e-scooters, bago ito, no? At hindi lang kabataan ang gumagamit ng e-scooters. So, in a quick rundown, ang pinaka-importante siguro is tandaan natin ang e-scooter ay sasakyan that can run up to probably almost 30 kilometers per hour. It is not a toy. That's number one. And like an ATV, it is only recommended that it be used by one individual at a time. Walang angkas, walang pasahero. That's number, because you have to maintain the proper balance and control. So that's the other thing. And then every time before you ride an e-scooter, check that everything is intact. Most importantly, that your brakes are intact and that your lights are intact. Again, we talk about visibility, seeing and being seen. So you have to make sure your light. May nakita ko papunta rito, ang ganda ng kanyang e-scooter, nakailaw yung the vertical pole was lit and the sides of her e-scooter. So you must be seen. So make sure everything works, the brakes as well as your lights. And then may PPE na naman tayong pag-uusapan sa e-scooter.
Yeah.
Ganun din. So very similar sa PPE na ginagamit sa ATV, head to toe. You must be ready to protect yourself. Most importantly, helmet, eye protection, gloves if possible, long sleeves if possible. Some even will recommend the knee and elbow pad. Kasi as much as 80% ng nasasaktan sa scooter, nahuhulog lang mula sa scooter. Eh kung naka-knee pad, naka-elbow pad, okay lang. Hindi man okay lang, pero less ang injury mo kung naka-knee pad and elbow pad ka if ever. And then choose a location na hindi ka naghahalo sa ibang motorista. So I think, I'm not sure of the route, they haven't yet set the rules here in Qatar, but potentially if possible, use the bike lanes. Marami ng daan kilometro na yata ang ginawa dito sa Qatar. As much as possible, be separate from highly motorized and highly powered vehicles if possible. Use the bike lane, but don't use the sidewalk. Kasi ang sidewalk para sa pedestrian. At maraming in the other countries na nagre-report na mas masama pa nga minsan yung masagasaan ng e-scooter habang pedestrian kasi hindi mo inaasahan eh. So, and you're in the sidewalk. So, if possible, if you cannot use a separate lane and you must use the roadway, use it like any other driver. And then siguro, the last thing again that we'll add on is 1/3 of those who get injured in an e-scooter crash are using it for the first time. So practice muna tayo.
Okay.
Practice bago tayo lumabas mismo sa kalye. We have a lot to learn pa about e-scooters. So far, wala pa kami nakikitang malala na nasaktan sa e-scooter. Sana wala na kaming makitang masaktan sa e-scooter. We hope.
Yeah.
So if you will remember some of the safety recommendations we made, or look up any good online reference para maging pinaka-safe ka na e-scooter user as much as possible.
All right. Thank you very much for that information. And again, of course, on our very first episode here at for the Usapang Qabayan, we have discussed some safety guidelines, lalo-lalo na sa mga winter activities at outdoor activities na ginagawa natin ngayong winter season. Of course, earlier we discussed the general safety and injury prevention, lalong-lalo na kapag gumagamit tayo ng quad bikes or ATVs kung tawagin natin, all-terrain vehicles, and also kung paano tayo magiging safe sa ating campsites, lalo na paggawa ng campsite, pagbuo niyan, and also sa pagdadrive natin to and from our work or sa pag-road trip natin, ganyan. And also yun nga, yung kahulihan yung e-scooter, and also the use of some heating equipment sa ating mga bahay. But right now, before we end the program, I would just like to ask Dr. Rafi, is there like any other message that you would like to leave our listeners for this evening?
Parang reminder lang,
Mhm.
nandito tayo lahat para makapagtrabaho, makapag-ipon para sa ating mga pamilya. Hindi natin magagawa yan kung hindi tayo healthy. At sa age group ninyong mga bata, ang pinaka-dangerous na pwedeng maging health issue nyo ay hindi cancer, hindi heart disease, hindi stroke, kung hindi kayo'y ma-injure o ma-trauma. So kailangan araw-araw we are exposed sa risk na to. Kailangan, ang tabayanan natin, kailangan nasa isipan natin na how can I do this safest, how can I do this safer, so I can continue to be a productive member of society here and be able to be productive for my family. And I thank Qabayan Radio again kasi napaka-importanting chance ito to reach our Qabayan community here, not only in Qatar but everywhere who people are listening. So please be safe, not only from COVID, but be safe from trauma as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much also for joining us here. It is a pleasure to be joined by your presence. Lalo na't maraming mga kabayan natin at ang lumalabas na, di ba? At nag-e-enjoy ng winter season. So as we end this program, I would just like to thank once again Dr. Rafael Consunji for joining us tonight. And this is the first and pilot episode of Usapang Qabayan, and we will be doing this on a regular basis every Saturdays. That's at 7 p.m. up until 8:30 p.m. And we will be discussing more topics about what will benefit us Filipinos here in Qatar. And thank you again for joining us. Tulad nga ng sabi namin kanina, the Qabayan Radio actually feels like it has an obligation to share with our kababayans kung ano nga ba yung makakatulong sa kanila. And our wellness is one of the things that we look at, and through this kind of program and through having a guest like Dr. Rafi, we are able to provide you some information that can hopefully give us some insights and some guidelines kung paano ba natin mapapaganda ang buhay natin dito sa Qatar. And once again, thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Rafael, and sa ating mga nakikinig. Stay tuned to Qabayan Radio 94.3. Of course, we will be playing more music for you, and see you again on Saturday next week from 7 o'clock up until 8:30 for a new topic of Usapang Qabayan. Once again, my name is Kenzo. Enjoy listening to music.